thank you, Alex, for the introduction. And I'm really happy to be here today on such a great topic around hiring in a high growth company, because I think, Jeppe, you'll agree with me. Great to have you on stage here. It is all about that. People make our companies, right? And so this is a great topic to be talking about. Quickly, I'll introduce myself, and then Jeppe, it'd be great to have you talk a little bit about what you're up to at Pleo. So I'm Reshma Sohoni, founding partner at Seedcamp. We are a pre-seed seed stage fund covering the European footprint, funded over 400 companies, one of which we're very proud to have done so, which is Pleo. We'll get more into that. Also Revolut, TransferWise, UiPath, Hopin, which we are on the platform of. So really thrilled to be here. And over 14 years, again, it really does come down to people. So with that, I'm going to get Jeppe to introduce himself very quickly, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for hosting us, and great to be here with you, Rashma. It's been quite a few years with Pleo and Seedcamp, so this is a good little reunion on such an important topic around hiring, because after all, it is the people that makes our business and moves us forward. Quick introduction to me. I'm one of two co-founders of Pleo. We started 6 years ago. And basically, we provide a product for small and mid-sized businesses to allow for company spending. So basically, enabling your workforce to pay the stuff they need for pay and buy the stuff they need for work, dealing with all those tedious things like your receipts, your categories, your bookkeeping, and so forth. We today service 20,000 businesses across 6 different European countries, and we are rolling out to more or less the entire Europe in the coming time. So stay tuned if you've not heard about us yet.
So yeah, I mean, you are the prototypical high growth, fast growth company in a very interesting sector with around fintech and 20,000 businesses. So really impactful out there. So we're going to break up the conversation in 2 parts: kind of early stage hiring and scale up hiring. And I think once we listen to you, we'll sort of see the difference there. But I think to kick off is, I think Jeppe, kind of meeting you in those early days, and I think you've been consistent throughout, I will say, is thoughtful. Your team, your co-founder, you guys have always been thoughtful. And so, and I see that in so many areas of what you guys do. And so taking the topic of kind of in those early days of growing the team, I mean, get into it a little bit. Is like, did you work on culture right at the start? How did you, were you a student of your company in the sense of, did you think about kind of really getting in there and setting up hiring practices and so forth? Or like probably 99% of the founders out there, you just kind of made it up as you went along?
Yeah. Thanks for describing us as thoughtful. Truth is, in the early days, we were just, doing whatever it took. And it was hard, in the early days, because you don't have a name, you don't have much capital, and there's a lot of risk associated with joining a company like Pleo. So we were rolling up our sleeves and just finding the first few people to join us. And honestly, when you don't have anything, you need to compromise a bit. And we didn't want to compromise on, you could say, the core quality of the people or the personalities or the culture. But what we did have to compromise with was the experience that those people we brought on board they had. So we brought on board pretty young people, and they had so much passion and so much raw talent, and we took a big bet on them being able to carry a lot of responsibility and growing a lot of us with us. And it also had its challenges, but I'm actually pretty happy with the approach we took back then.
I mean, we'll get into kind of the roles a little bit, but on the compromise, I mean, do you feel you made a bunch of mistakes, or I think that's a part of it, right? And like, did Did you have to let go
Yeah.
people? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
We made mistakes, to be honest. We did eventually, from time to time, hire the wrong people, and we had to let them go. And I think that's just a part of it. And you're arguably easily too late with that. At least we were. I think we were giving people sometimes a little bit too long of a leash, but eventually we had to let some people go. That's a part of it. I think when you have nothing, it's just very difficult to find people that you're absolutely 100% comfortable with when you don't have a brand and you don't have much to offer. But I do think we did find a really solid core team early on, and many of them stayed with us for a long time. Some of them are still here and just really grew a lot with us, and sort of completely exponentially grew their career with Pleo.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit about, at some point sort of people will transition and kind of that a little bit more. But I mean, I think even we've actually brought a head of talent on recently. We've actually done that in different guises over the last decade or so. And I think one of the things we do say is you should allow yourself mistakes in early hiring. Is it actually you get to know more of what fits at your particular company, what fits with your particular culture and kind of team dynamic and so forth. So, I mean, I know our founders really kind of lose a lot of sleep over the early hires, and they're really afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to show us as investors some of the mistakes we've made. And it's probably, hopefully, it's one of the most helpful things I can do as an investor is early on is to say, allocate yourself multiple mistakes on recruiting, but part ways with the person amicably, be quickly as well, is to really understand that it's not a fit, and you'll get many things wrong, but out of that you will develop that muscle and an instinct for hiring better and longer term. And actually another question before and I want to understand kind of what are the traits that make a good hire at Pleo. But would you say you guys are good at hiring? Like, do you hire well?
I think we hire pretty well, and I think we've learned our lessons over time. And I think one thing we made right fairly early on was to think about hiring almost as a product that you need to invest in, and you need to crack, and you need to get your market fit with hiring. So we actually invested into building our own internal search agency. You could say early on. Today we have, I would say, roughly 12 people full time on recruiting. But
Wow.
it started much earlier, and we've done a lot of trial and error on the approach. And I think one of the things that really went well for us was the outreach process, and how we've managed to come across pretty unique in the messaging and the storytelling when we sell a job opportunity, and we measure our response rates and stuff like that. And having this extremely authentic, personal approach to reaching out has paid off for us. And then, it's a fully professional organization right now that takes care of the candidate experience and all of that. So, but now we're hiring 30 people a month. So now it's a machine. But like even early on, when we only hired 2, 3, 4 a month, we were still investing into it.
Wow. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of next into that. I mean, and then, kind of on candidates and the profile, has that changed for you? I mean, if you think back to the early days too, were you trying to hire more kind of jack of all trades, or more specific knowledge in certain product or business areas, if you can kind of think back to the early times?
Yeah, I think it has changed a lot, to be honest. I think early on we hired generalists, very sort of people that had showed some degree of being versatile and adapting to new challenges. And we gave people a really broad responsibility, and we were actually expecting them to go, shut down some fires here and there outside of their roles. And they were also generally, as said, quite young and inexperienced, but they had a massive amount of talent and passion and grind. Whereas I would say reaching 50 employees, that's when you start to think a bit more about leadership, and you start to think a little bit more about bringing in experts that have done the job in depth before. And at 400 people, which is where we're at now, I would definitely say that bringing in leadership, people that have seen the journey, that have scaled beyond where we are today, is a big topic in those that we hire. So certainly something that has changed over time. But maybe I feel like I'm doing all of the answers here. Maybe I'm going to pose a question to you, Reshma.
Yes.
Maybe picking up on some of the advice you gave just before, because I think it's as a founder, it's an interesting question and topic to think about. What can we expect from our investors when it comes to hiring? How are you trying to be supportive on that with your portfolio companies?
Yeah. I mentioned kind of the head of talent, and we've done it in different guises over time. And I see, more and more VCs. It's funny because I've been in venture capital. I've been on kind of company side as well over 25 years, and you see different patterns, but same, right? History repeats itself. And so I see how VC organizations are growing as well. But I think the biggest probably thing, there's a temptation in venture, because you're there early days with your companies and you're with them kind of as they're growing, is the difference between fishing and learning how to fish. And so I think where we focus any support we can give across many different areas, also on, our, Natasha on our team as well, who's such an expert on marketing and different people, have sales skills and so forth, is on hiring too, is you're tempted to want to help you recruit. Like I want to help, Pleo recruit in the early days or when any of our new companies, and then versus building that skill set around how to hire. So I think we see our role is that how do we help you different companies, learn to do the fishing, and in that, which is like, how do you learn about kind of the importance also of culture setting, process setting, how to do interviews, is because again, as you're growing, there is a lot of science you can put in versus just the art of the hustle as such. So that's where we see our role. And the other one is, I think, the nature of kind of where kind of fundraising has gone to today, and kind of rounds and sizes, and then the makeup of those is that there are multiple institutions around. And so we also see ourselves as an entity where we don't want to repeat what someone else is doing. And so we also tend to kind of pull away more at Series A or B to say, now Stripes Group for you guys or others are really the right VC partner for you guys to help with your hiring needs and your scale up. And we'll get into that in a second. And where we pull away is like we just keep going back to the kind of fundamentals at that seed to Series A journey around recruiting. And I think for folks out there is like that, do that homework, in terms of interviewing your investors, is what do different angels or VC funds add, can they play together nicely and with you, and are you getting something different from each of them versus kind of the cookie cutter same. So can I ask you, as we get into scale up here a little bit?
Okay. No, I was saying I was nodding while you were speaking, Reshma, because as a Seedcamp company, I obviously recognize a lot of the stuff you were saying. And maybe to add to that, I think one thing that has been incredibly important for us has been our employer brand, and the recognition of your brand with which investors you're backed by is just extremely important. That is one of the key, I would say, candidate validations that they're doing, is like, so who's behind this company? And having quality funds behind you from early on, when people don't really know about your company, I think has been incredibly important for us.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm going to take that back to the team too. It's nice to hear. Well, we're going to really firmly jump into the scale up part, because you were saying so many interesting things around kind of, you're hiring 30 people a month. You did bring on folks to really run a process, and you have 12 people. So yeah, to really unpack that, kind of, I do see stages of your sort of 0 to 10 people. 10 to 50 is a really interesting, when you get to 50 employees, 50, 100, and then kind of 200, 300. When did you bring someone more full-time to really just focus on talent? And I'd love to see if that matches up with some of the advice we're giving.
We did it at around 40 people. We brought in the first dedicated people person, Jessie, who still runs people here at Pleo. She did, however, split her time between general people processes, onboarding programs, stuff like that, and hiring. But fairly early after that, I would say 6 months later, she started to hire a few dedicated recruiters that did the outreach, and we implemented a more professional process and a recruiting tool and those kind of things. So around, I would say, 40 to 60 people was when we started to be focused on that.
Okay, yeah, no, I think depending on sort of the, ability to ingest, and also just sort of how fast sales needs hiring. I mean, we're recommending around kind of that 20, 30 people mark. Also, is just, it gets very tough for you as both, a co-founder and a CEO. It's two hats as such to try to do that. And what do you kind of, now and sort of moving from that 50 to 100 people, 200 people, how did you guys kind of tackle multiple locations? We're in this world of hybrid today too. I mean, how did you guys sort of manage for that, and keeping this, again, consistency around quality and culture? I know it's a big topic and we have a few minutes, but yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more.
It is a big topic, and honestly, I feel like I've been pretty lucky here, because very randomly we hired a few folks locally here in Copenhagen that were big believers in remote working early on, much bigger believers than I was, to be completely honest. They convinced me to go down that path, and we started with a few people working from Canada who were very sort of comfortable with our team in Copenhagen, because they were former colleagues, and they were just incredible at establishing a remote first culture. So we got all the technologies in place, the hygiene around never having meetings before 2 p.m. local time to make the time zones work and stuff like that. And it just worked really well. And then we complemented that with always bringing people together. So we would always start people up in Copenhagen, have them spend a couple of weeks here to commit and get to know the team.
Yeah.
At that point in time, we had 4 company-wide offsites a year. It was a lot, but so we invested a lot into bringing people together. And honestly, what it meant was that, there was never a difference in how we perceived people, no matter from where they worked. They were, socially as plugged in, professionally as plugged in, and it's just never been something we've thought about. And last month we brought 400 people to Costa Brava to do the same, and we've obviously not been able to do that for a while. But the consistency in the quality of people and the culture and the energy across our 6 offices and all of those working from home was just astonishing. I think the culture is so strong that it just replicates eventually.
Yeah. No, great. And I know we're short. Last question though, because you were a CXO before, not CEO, CXO before, and then so probably one question I know a lot of our companies, and I'm sure audience as well, is thinking about is like, we're hustling, we've got the hustlers, the real kind of like, I want to conquer the world people, and then I got to get into VPs and the CXOs, right? And really, I got to start hiring that, and should I? And so, kind of when did you guys start to do that as part of your scale up journey, and any advice, I guess?
Yeah, I think for us it happened, I would say, somewhat organically, probably starting about 3 years ago, when we were probably approaching 75 to 100 employees. That's when we started to bring in people that came from more proven leadership backgrounds. But we tried to mix it a bit, and we had some internal people making it to those kind of levels as well, and combining that with people from the outside. I would say my experience is it's extremely important that you also get people in from the outside that have done it before. I mean, it just brings some comfort and some calmness and stuff like that. Whilst I think it's also just very important to bring people upwards from the inside and show that, you know, the company can do that we can develop leaders from the inside. So I think some sort of balance between internal promotions and bringing people in from the outside is important. Recently, we've brought in quite a few C-level folks that have very proven backgrounds, and that's helpful, but it's also just extremely difficult to find, and those search processes are intense.
Look, I know we could go on another hour. We're running out of time. Any final thoughts from you? And I'll add a couple sentences of mine at the end.
No, this has been really, really, really fun. Maybe just a final note from you, Reshma. So what's the trend that you are seeing? What is the latest and greatest on founders? Any last advice to me and all the other founders out there?
I do think that it starts from the beginning. We probably after more than a decade is go back to the basics. It is the thoughtfulness. It's setting up the kind of culture. You get a culture whether you want it or not, and so setting it up thoughtfully from the beginning, asking your investors and others around to help you to learn learn how to rather than to do for you, and that it is it's a real war for talent. Out there. And so if you do these things and you have foundations in place, I think you'll replicate kind of Pleo's journey of, people who stay the length, right? The distance as such from startup to scale up, but also you will make mistakes. And my final thing to say is you need to be a good hiring company. Like at the end of the day, the CEO or the founders, you need to have good muscles around hiring. I have to say the successful businesses we see are just really fantastic at getting the right, like sometimes revolutionary people on board, but incredibly high quality talent on board. So thank you so much. We'll end with that thought, and have a wonderful conference, everyone.
Thanks, Reshma. It's been incredible speaking with you.